I would like us to challenge the NSA to give us empirical data at which insecurity has been dropping in the country. Because there's a pure difference between underreportage, which I see has now become a trend because people have resigned to faith, and actual outcomes.
Hello, my great and wonderful people. How una day today? I hope all of una day well. Today we get a lot of videos for our table. We're going to be saying one quickly the review to you concerning the things when we say if they happen right now for inside this country, Nigeria. Yes, right since the time when it be say Bola Tinubu and Okaba take over the seat of presidency of this very country, Nigeria, a lot of things don't they happen. And this man come with a promise to Nigerians, say, immediately he enter that Asurok, he will hit the ground running. And because of that, a lot of people, when they also get understanding on how things supposed to they go for inside this country. Don't they come outside, they ask questions concerning the way when they say Bola Tinubu and your old boys, they use things they work out for inside this country, and that they come outside, they talk opposite for the face of every Nigerians. And one of the people when they say if they ask those questions, now Rufai Oseni when it be a Rise News journalist. And after that very video, some senators don't also come outside to oppose Bola Tinubu and his own proposal for the loan when it be said that they borrow on daily basis. The crack come outside say this one not good for I again. I will still leave you to watch that very video as well, and so many other videos when we get for today's broadcast. Just sit down, relax with us as we take you through that process.
I would like us to challenge the NSA to give us empirical data at which insecurity has been dropping in the country. Because there's a pure difference between underreportage, which I see has now become a trend because people have resigned to faith, and actual outcomes. But the cases that are still reported are cases that are very loud. And that is indicative in what happened recently in some parts of the north. What will be that empirical evidence to show, that farmers can now go back to farm, where large swaths of land are inundated? Will you say that those areas in Niger has been taken back from those bandits that the former governor of the state called out the people for and said, see, parts of my state are really inundated? Will you say the security situation has improved, even with the last election that were held, where you saw widespread violence in parts where those elections were held? So, general overview. We'd like to see the empirical data. And also, something he did say in the course of the week, that this government inherited a lot of indebtedness. I would like this government to publish in details the extent of indebtedness, because this looks like a normal refrain. I remember when the government of Buhari came in, President Buhari, Mr. Femi Adesina went to town with a very sweet language then, said they were clearing the organ stable of the Jonathan administration. But turns out, a governor from the APC, an outgone governor now, did recently say that the so-called Jonathan administration that they said was not good enough, had a lot of, mismanagement, was still the only administration in recent times that brought about development. And the indices were there in terms of economic growth and all of that. So let's have the precise figures. I think Mr. Peter Obi also enunciated that question. And let's have the precise figure of this level of indebtedness. And this, let me use the words of Mr. Femi Adesina, organ stable that this administration says they are clearing now as we speak, because everybody keeps talking about this backlog. Furthermore, I think Mr. Nuhu Ribadu says they want to adopt an approach where they do and people see what they are doing. I think it's best for the people to be able to make those inferences about how security has improved greatly. And I think it's not for us to be saying in 6 months' time that, we have done better than what we are today, when we are looking at the fact that things have not pretty much changed and it's just largely underreported. I just needed to make that point clear. Also, Mr. Fag may be talking about trying terrorists. Yes, that's a good one. That's a welcomed one. You know, we want the terrorists to be tried. But the question we keep asking is the political will and the confusion that goes around now trying terrorists. If my memory serves me right, the last administration had something called Operation Suluhu, where, like Dr. Abati would like to couch it, they pretty much gave terrorists ashwebi, jollof rice, chicken, and everything good. And it looks as though that we had built a culture where we welcome terrorists like the prodigal son. In fact, we even bring out proverbial Yoruba drums beating for them, Kaabo, Sheda, Dalude, and we pretty much thank them for their active service of terrorism. But if the Attorney General said they will be tried, we would like them to be tried. But apart from trying them, we would also like where they will keep them to be looked at. Because since we had a major prison break in Abuja and some terrorists left, we've not been able to even give account. You know, we've not been able to give account of those terrorists that went back and introspect on even our processes and what happened as regards that prison break. So how is the process going to go of trying terrorists? How can we bring a lasting end to all of this? But most importantly, it's not about trying terrorists. You see, there's something called the war economy I always talk about. Nigeria has built a war economy in the Northeast. That's why all of this continues. And the war economy involves many parties possible. And these parties are contending because they make gains from the wars. So how can we dismantle the war economy or replace the war economy with another viable economy in those areas? That is what is going to take it off. And that's why I go back to quoting Hernando de Soto. At the height of the insurrection by the Shining Path rebels, who would have thought that an economist like Hernando de Soto, giving the people property rights and advising the government to give people property rights was going to solve the problem that the military could not solve over the years? So there's an economy to everything. We've built a war economy in the Northeast. Even for the crimes in Nigeria, we've built an economy for the crimes. And until we fix that and remove and divert that attention of that economy into other viable things, then we cannot grow as a nation. So
all right, my great and wonderful people, I believe say una don't hear few of the questions when it be say Rufai Oseni ask these people on behalf of Nigerians. Now, because of time, I will leave you to do the rest for us of the comment section, even as we take you down to this other video. And this video and the video when it be say it concern the finance minister, when it be say they come outside, also send a message across to the senators, say enough don't they enough for the borrow when it be say Bola Tinubu inherits from Azim Buhari and the way when it be say that they go about the whole issue. I want to make una listen to everything when it be say this my talk. I'll come back for more.
In the environment that we have now, both internationally as well as nationally, we are in no position to rely on borrowing. We have an existing borrowing program, and as distinguished Senator Abiru has said, our attempt and our direction of travel is to reduce reliance on borrowing, reduce the quantum and the percentage of deficit financing in the 2024 budget. Government needs to not just maintain its activity, it needs to spend more. So government needs even more. If you look at government spending, if you look at the budget as a percentage of GDP, ours is one of the lowest, maybe around 10%. Even Ghana is at 25%.
There are quite a lot of shortfalls that we are having as a result of issues of waivers. And we don't know who is issuing those waivers. Is it FIRS, is it NIPC, or the Federal Ministry of Finance? There is also a project that is ongoing. If you look at the dailies today, they've captured it based on what the customs said yesterday about the e-custom. A committee like Committee on Finance, we want to know what kind of agreement Nigeria is going into. What is the value of that contract that is going? How much are we expecting that by the time they deploy, we'll be making? So that we don't go into signing agreements that have led, Nigeria have signed so many agreements that have led us to so many judgment deaths.
All right, my great and wonderful people, I believe say una don hear that very one from the finance ministers. How it be say then themselves, they cry come outside, say their hand not there for this issue of borrow, when it be say Bola Tinubu inherits from his own predecessor, when it be assume Buhari. All right, because of time, we get this other video when we say we'll quickly leave you make you watch. When we they receive from some financial experts, when they take come outside for this Money Arise News interview to review to Nigerians their own position still on this issue of loan and also all the debt when it be say this administration they a cure for the head of Nigerians. We'll come back for more.
Joining us now is Tilewa Adebajo, CEO of the CFG Advisory, while Professor Ndubuisi Nwokoma is a professor of financial economics and director Center for Economic Policy Analysis and Research at the University of Lagos, he will be joining us later. But now, Tilewa Adebajo, thank you very much for joining us. Two issues there. I don't need to provide any summary. First, inflation. Headline inflation, over 27% now. The food inflation has gone higher further. But then the CBN, Abdulmumene, the corporate communications director, is saying that, look, this is not a bad situation. This shows that monetary policies introduced by this administration and the central bank are working. And he's talking about open market auctions and all of that. How? People are talking about food inflation and other indicators in that report. I mean, you have done a detailed analysis of it. The second issue is what Mr. Edun was saying yesterday at the Joint Senate Committee about borrowing. And he is saying that Nigeria cannot afford to borrow to fund the 2024 budget. I thought we used to hear that, we're not borrowing enough, that in fact, our borrowing profile to GDP is still not up to 40% or was still not up to 40%. But this administration is saying a different. And the irony was that Patience Oniha, the DG of the DMO, who used to say we can borrow more, the threshold is still open for us to borrow. She accompanied the Minister of Finance there. I think now she's saying something else. She's now saying, oh, okay, this is the way we need to generate revenue. Why do these people talk like that? Anyway, those two issues.
Let me take the second issue first with the debt issue. I think, first of all, I'm happy that the Minister of Finance has said what he said, unequivocal. Yes, while you might say your spending compared to your GDP or budget levels are low, it's not a problem. All those things you're talking about, debt to GDP ratio, the Debt Management Office, unfortunately, has been compromised from the Ways and Means financing proposition. So I don't think the Patience Oniha is in a position to comment because they had compromised and breached Section 38 of the CBN Act. So right now, I think what the Minister of Finance is doing is now putting the reality on the table to the senators, very clearly telling them that we cannot continue. Okay, America's debt to GDP ratio is 101%, but America spends 8% of its revenues on debt service. Our own debt to GDP ratio is maybe on the 50s, but we are spending 98%, as the minister has said, of our revenues on debt service. So clearly it's not sustainable. So let's understand how we misinterpret ratios. We cannot continue to misinterpret ratios to suit ourselves. So I'm happy what the Minister of Finance has said, and I think it's cautionary, because what is even more glaring is that the medium-term economic framework within the next 2 years Debt service is going to be more than recurrent expenditure and also capital expenditure. So therein lies the challenge, and I think that the Minister of Finance has told the legislators clearly what the reality is, and we now have to face that reality with the 2024 budget. So it's very important because that is being projected. And of course, if you do not have the revenues, you can't continue to do deficit financing. So you need to be able to increase your revenue profile for you to be able to spend that. We have a 14 trillion deficit from the 2024 budget. No, 2023, this year's budget will come up with a 14 trillion deficit, and we're projecting a 9 trillion deficit for next year's budget. So we're going to carry over close to about 23 trillion worth of deficits that is going to be carried over next year. On your second point of inflation, inflation is very simply cause and effect. Okay, what is driving inflation to 30%, which are at historical highs? If you take a look at this graph, you can see how inflation has happened in Nigeria. And you can see in 2005, we had close to about 24, 25%. Now we're hitting 30%. So in the last 18 years, we've seen how inflation has gone and is currently now at a historical high. But you can see that sometimes we've managed our inflation, it goes up, we bring it down, it goes up, we bring it down. It's very simple. What is the impact of inflation? Food inflation is the impact, food prices, the removal of the subsidy, and of course, 30 trillion of ways and means financing. So the effect of all these ways and means financing is being reflected in the inflation numbers. So it's not a surprise. So because, it's cause and effect. But of course, we cannot continue to look at inflation in isolation. We have to take a look at the impact of inflation on interest rates, and we have to take a look at the impact of inflation on GDP growth. And that's the sort of modeling that we have done in terms of the research that we are presenting today.
All right, my great and wonderful people. I believe say una don't hear everything when they say these people review during this very broadcast today. And the question when they say would they ask ourselves now not pass be say they go here. Not because of say they not they see all these things so that they see them, but they not go here. You know why? Because they not get any idea to generate money. They not get any idea to stand on their own, to use what they get to generate what they want. Now, the reason why it be said that they look for already made, where it be said people don't already do finish for them to borrow. They know say not be them that will pay them, not be them will pay them. So they will rather borrow and leave for another one to inherit. I remember the time when they say Bola Tinubu, they do campaign. It thought say assume Buhari na him be the best. His own administration na him be the best. It will continue from where he stopped. Right? Now the time when they say he tell us about his own slogan for the campaign, when they say he call Renew Hope. Right? Now in the thought say Bola Tinubu break this nation Nigeria down totally, given a heavy load to carry. This one are the latest reports when it come out from Bola Tinubu and his own team. Say na assume Buhari na him be the problem when it be say they inherits. And the question when it be say we want like to ask Bola Tinubu when it be say they cry come outside now say assume Buhari leave a lot of load for them to carry. They not be part and parcel of APC right from the beginning. Now another party take over administration of this nation. No, now APC when they say it go, now it still take over the administration. If una tell us say una no know the load or the way when they say APC fit govern this nation for the past 8 years, before una use the same method to campaign to Nigerians, say una will do Renew Hope for us, una will stand upon the waiting assume Buhari don't do to continue from there, then who una the fool? Now Nigerians are be now una self. All right, I'll leave you to share your own opinion with us in the comment section, even as we draw the line of this very broadcast here. We'll see you again when we see you. Remember, we love you all. Bye-bye.